Zhuangzi. Chapter 2. Equalizing Assessments of Things. Sir Shoestrap of Southwall was leaning against his armrest on the ground, gazing upward and releasing his breath into the heavens above, all in a scatter there, as if loosed from a partner.
Sir Swimmy Face form stood in attendance before him. "Who or what is this here?" he asked. "Can the body really be made like a withered tree? The mind like dead ashes? What leans against this armrest now is not what leaned against it before."
Sir Shoestrap of Southwall said, "How good it is that you question this, Yan. What's here now is this. I have lost me. But could you know who or what that is? You hear the piping of man without yet hearing the piping of earth. You hear the piping of earth without yet hearing the piping of heaven."
Sir Swimmy Face formed said, "Please tell me more." Sir Shoestrap of Southwall replied, "When the great clump belches forth its vital breath, we call it the wind. As soon as it begins, raging cries emerge from all the 10,000 hollows, and surely you cannot have missed the rustle and bustle that then goes on. The bulges and drops of the mountain forest, the indentations and holes riddling its massive, towering trees, are like noses, mouths, ears, like sockets, enclosures, mortars, like ponds, like puddles, roars and whizzers, scolders and sighers, shouters, wailers, boomers, growlers. One leads with a yee, another answers with a yoo. A light breeze brings a small harmony, while a powerful gale makes for a harmony vast and grand. And once the sharp wind has passed, all these holes return to their silent vacuity. Have you never seen all their tempered attunements, all their cunning contentions?" Sir Swimmy Face form said, "So the piping of the earth means just the sound of these hollows, and the piping of man would be the sound of bamboo panpipes. What then is the piping of heaven?" Sir Shoestrap said, "It is the gusting through all the 10,000 differences that yet causes all of them to come only from themselves. For since every last identity is only what some one of them picks out from it, what identity can there be for their rouser? A large consciousness is idle and spacey. A small consciousness is cramped and circumspect. Big talk is bland and flavorless. Petty talk is detailed and fragmented. We sleep and our spirits converge. We awake and our bodies open outward. We give, we receive, we act, we construct, trying to make something of whatever we encounter. All day long we apply our minds to our struggles. Some straightforward, some deeply buried away, some dogging us closely. The small fears leave us nervous and depleted. The large fears leave us stunned and blank, shooting forth like an arrow from a bowstring. Thus is our presumption as we arbitrate right and wrong, holding fast as if to sworn oaths. Thus is our defense of our victories, worn away as if by autumn and winter. Such is our daily dwindle, the flailings of a drowning man unable to get him any closer to the shore, pressed on all sides as if sealed in. Such is the old drainage ditch, the rut in which we're stuck, the mind left on the verge of death with no way back to the bygone vitality. Joy and anger, sorrow and happiness, plans and regrets, transformations and stagnations, unguarded abandonment and deliberate posturing, music flowing out of hollows, mushrooms of billowing steam. Day and night, they alternate before our eyes, yet no one knows whence they sprout. Let us stop right there. No need to go further. Already, it is constantly coming to us day and night, this from which they are all born. Without that, there's no me. And yet, without me, there's nothing picked out from it. It is something that is always very close to me indeed. And yet still, I can never know what is doing the causing here. If there is in fact something in control of causing all this to happen, it is peculiarly devoid of any sign that could identify what it is.
Even when its ability to act has been so reliable, it shows no definite form. It would have to be some kind of reality that lacks any definite form. A reality without any single identity.
The 100 bones, the 9 openings, the 6 internal organs are all present here as my body. Which one is most dear to me? Do you delight in all equally? Or do you have some favorites among them? Or are they all mere servants and concubines? Are these servants and concubines unable to govern one another? Or do they take turns as master and servant? If there is a genuine ruler among them, its genuineness would have to be of some kind that is the same, whether any definite reality could ever be found for it or not. We receive of it some one completed form, a specific fully formed body, and then we keep that alive only by constantly anticipating its end, grinding and lacerating it against all the things around us. Everything it does just flashing by and away, like an unstoppable galloping horse. Is it not sad? All our lives we labor, and nothing is achieved. Worn and exhausted to the point of collapse, never knowing what it all amounts to. How can we not lament this? What good does it do if others say, "To us he is not dead"? The body has decayed and the mind went with it. Can this be called anything but an enormous sorrow? Is human life always and everywhere such a daze? Or could it be only me who is dazed, while there are also others who are undazed? Of humans, is there anything or anyone undazed? And similarly, if we just follow whatever completed form of our minds has so far taken shape, making that our master and teacher, who could ever be without a teacher? That is something even the most ignorant are always doing without fail. It is not as if the mind is first required to know all the alternating states, and then actively selects for itself, from among them the one to be taken as master and teacher. For the mind to be able to do that before any completed form has already taken shape in it, to make such an affirmation or negation about which form it will regard as right and which as wrong without already having taken some shape. That would be like leaving for UA today and arriving there yesterday. This is to regard the non-existent as existent. The existence of the non-existent is beyond the understanding even of the divine Sage King Yu. So what possible sense could it make to someone like me?
But human speech is not just a blowing of air. Speech has something of which it speaks, something it refers to.
Yes, but what it refers to is peculiarly unfixed. So is there really anything it speaks of? Or has nothing ever been spoken of? You take it to be different from the chirping of baby birds. Is there really any difference? Or is there no difference? Is there any dispute going on there? Or is there no dispute? Is anything demonstrated by it? Or is nothing demonstrated by it? How could any course of activity become so concealed and unnoticed that there could be any question about whether it is a genuine or a false course? How could any act of speaking become so concealed and unnoticed that there could be any question about whether it is right or wrong to say? After all, where could any course veer off to without that? Course thus being present there. Where could any speaking be present without that speech thus being deemed acceptable there? But courses qua courses get concealed behind the small formations that they themselves succeed in shaping, and speech qua speech gets concealed behind the garlands of honor it itself brings on. Hence, we have the rights and wrongs of the Confucians and Mohis, each affirming what the other denies, and denying what the other affirms. But if you want to affirm what they deny, and deny what they affirm, nothing compares to the illumination of the obvious.
There is no thing that is not a that. There is no thing that is not a this. One is oneself also a that, another. But this is not something one can directly see. Rather, it is known through the understanding, which thus says thatness emerges from thisness, and thisness follows from thatness. This is his theory of the simultaneous generation of the this and the that. However, by the very same token, it can say that their simultaneous generation means also their simultaneous demise, and vice versa. When it affirms either one, it simultaneously finds it has denied it. When it denies either one, it simultaneously finds it has affirmed it. By going along with the affirmation, it goes along with the denial. By going along with the denial, it goes along with the affirmation. Thus, the sage does not proceed from any one of these alone, but instead lets them all bask in the broad daylight of heaven. That is also a way of going along with the rightness of each this, going along with thisness itself. For to be a this is in fact also to be a that, and every that is also a this. That is then itself already both this and not this, both a right and a wrong. But this is also itself already both this and not this, both a right and a wrong. So is there really any this as opposed to not this, any right as opposed to wrong? Or is there really no this as opposed to not this, no right as opposed to wrong? A state where this and not this, right and wrong, are no longer coupled. As opposites is called course as axis, the axis of all courses. When this axis finds its place in the center, it responds to all the endless things it confronts, thwarted by none. For it has an endless supply of rights and an endless supply of wrongs. Thus, I say, nothing compares to the illumination of the obvious. For you can use the act of indication as an illustration of the unindicated that belongs to all indication. But that is no match for using the unindicated itself as an illustration of the unindicated that belongs to all indication. You can use a horse to show the non-horseness of a horse, but that is no match for using the non-horseness itself to show the non-horseness of horses. Any single indication is of all heaven and earth. Any single horse is all the 10,000 things.
Something is allowed because some allowing of it has happened. Something is disallowed because some disallowing of it has happened. Courses are formed by walking them. Things are so by being called so. Whence, thus, and so. From thus and so being affirmed of them. Whence, not thus, and so. From thus and so being denied of them. Each thing necessarily has some place from which it can be affirmed as thus and so, and some place from which it can be affirmed as acceptable. So no thing is not right, no thing is not acceptable. For whatever we may define as a beam as opposed to a pillar, as a leper as opposed to the great beauty Shishi, or whatever might be from some perspective strange, grotesque, uncanny, or deceptive, there is a course that opens them into one another, connecting them to form a oneness. Their divisions are formations. Their formations are destructions. Thus all things are also free of formation and destruction, for these also open into one another, connecting to form a oneness. It is only someone who really gets all the way through them, who can see how the two sides open into one another, connecting them to form a oneness. Such a person would not deploy any one particular way of defining rightness, but would instead entrust it to the everyday function of each being. Their everyday function is what works for them, and working just means this opening them up into one another, their way of connecting. Opening to form a connection just means getting what you get. Go as far as whatever you happen to get to, and leave it at that. It is all just a matter of going along with all that is entailed in thisness, going by the rightness of the present, this. the sense in which everything and everyone is always already doing precisely that, but without knowing it, and without knowing it to be right, is just what we mean by the Course. But to labor your spirit trying to make all things one, without realizing that it is all the same whether you do so or not, is called 3 in the morning. What is this 3 in the morning? Once a monkey trainer was distributing chestnuts. He said, "I'll give you 3 in the morning and 4 in the evening."
The monkeys were furious. "Well then," he said, "I'll give you 4 in the morning and 3 in the evening." The monkeys were delighted. This change brought them no loss either in name or in fact, but in one case it brought anger, and in another delight. He just went along with the thisness, relying on the rightness of the present, this. Thus, the Say uses various rights and wrongs to harmonize with others, and yet remains at rest in the middle of heaven, the potter's wheel. This is called walking 2 roads. The understanding of those ancient people really got somewhere. Where had it arrived? To the point where there had never existed any definite thing at all. This is really getting there, as far as you can go. When no definite thing exists, nothing more could be added. Next, there were those for whom specific things existed, but no sealed boundaries between them. Next, there were those for whom there were sealed boundaries, but never any rights and wrongs. When rights and wrongs wax bright, the course begins to wane. What sets the course to waning is exactly what allows preference for one thing over another to succeed in reaching its full formation. But is there really any waning versus fullness? Or is there really no such thing as waning versus fullness? In a certain sense, there exists waning versus fullness, loss versus success. In that sense, we can say that the Zhaos are zither players. But in a certain sense, there is no such thing as waning versus fullness, no loss versus success. In that sense, we can say, on the contrary, that the Zhaos are not zither players. Zhao Wen strumming his zither, Master Kuang tapping out the time, Huizi leaning on his desk. The understanding these 3 had of their arts waxed most full. This was what they flourished in, and thus they pursued these arts to the end of their days. They delighted in them, and observing that this delight of theirs was not shared, they wanted to shine its light and make it obvious to others. So they tried to make others understand as obvious what was not obvious to them. And thus some ended their days in the darkness of debating about hardness and whiteness. And Zhao Wen's son ended his days still grappling with his father's zither strings. Can this be called success? Being fully accomplished at something? In that case, even I am fully accomplished. Can this be called failure? Lacking the full accomplishment of something? If so, neither I nor anything else can be considered fully accomplished. Thus, the radiance of drift and doubt is the sage's only map. He deploys no single definition of what is right, but instead entrusts it to the everyday function of each thing. This is what was meant by using the illumination of the obvious.
Now I will try some words here about this, but I don't know if it belongs in the same category as this or not. For belonging in a category and not belonging in that category themselves form a single category. Being similar is so similar to being dissimilar, so there is finally no way to keep it different from that. Nevertheless, let me try to say it. There is a beginning. There is a not yet beginning to be a beginning. There is a not yet beginning to not yet begin to be a beginning. There is existence. There is non-existence. There is a not yet beginning to be non-existence. There is a not yet beginning to not yet begin to be non-existence. Suddenly, there is non-existence, but I do not yet know whether the existence of non-existence is ultimately existence or non-existence. Now I have said something, but I do not yet know. Has what I have said really said anything? Or has it not really said anything? Nothing in the world is larger than the tip of a hair in autumn, and Mantai is small. No one lives longer than a dead child, and old Pengzu died an early death. Heaven and earth are born together with me, and the 10,000 things and I are one. But if we are all one, can there be anything to say? Anything to refer to? But since I have already declared that we are one, can there be nothing to say? Nothing to refer to? The one and the saying are already two. The two in the original unsaid one are three. Going on like this, even a skilled chronicler could not keep up with it, not to mention a lesser man. So even moving from non-existence to existence, we already arrive at three. How much more when we move from existence to existence, rather than moving from anywhere to anywhere? Then, let us just go along with thisness, relying on the rightness of whatever is before us as the present this. For courses have never had any sealed boundaries between them, and words have never had any constant range. It is by establishing definitions of what is this, what is right, that boundaries are made. Let me explain what I mean by boundaries. There are right and left, then there are roles and duties, then there are divisions and disputes, then there are competitions and struggles.
And this is the kind of thing they call the 8 virtues.
As for the sage, he may admit that something exists beyond the 6 limits of the known world, but he does not make any further assessments about it. As for what is within the known world, he may assess it, but will not express his own opinion. As for historical events, he will give an opinion but not debate it. For wherever a division is made, something is left undivided. Wherever debate shows one of 2 alternatives to be right, something remains undistinguished and unshown. What is it? The sage hides it in his embrace while the masses of people debate it, trying to demonstrate it to one another. Thus I say that demonstration by debate always leaves something unshown. The greatest course is thus always unproclaimed. Greatest argument is that which uses no words. Greatest human kindness is that which is neither human nor kind. Greatest integrity is that which declines nothing. Greatest courage is that which is unaggressive. For when the guidance of a course becomes explicit, when it becomes clearly and manifestly a course, it ceases to be the course. When words make an argument, they fail to reach everywhere. When human kindness is constant, it cannot be all-encompassing. When integrity is pure, it cannot be trusted. When courage is aggressive, it cannot reach completion. These 5 are rounded on all sides, but people are always trying to make them square. Hence, when understanding comes to stop at what it does not understand, when consciousness comes to rest there where it has no consciousness, it has arrived at the utmost. The demonstration that uses no words, the course that gives no guidance, the course that is not a course. Who understands these things? What could know them? If there is some kind of knowing of them, it could only be what we might call the heavenly reservoir, poured into without ever getting full, ladled out of without ever running out, ever not knowing its own source. This is called the shadowy splendor.
In ancient times, Yao asked Shun, I want to attack Zong, Kuai, and Shuao, for though I sit facing south on the throne, still I am not at ease. Why is this? Shun said, though these 3 may continue to dwell out among the bushes and grasses, why should this make you ill at ease? Once upon a time, 10 suns rose in the sky at once, and the 10,000 things were all simultaneously illuminated. And how much better are multiple virtuosities than multiple suns?
Nogap asked Baby Sovereign, "Do you know what all things agree in considering right?"
Baby Sovereign said, "How could I know that?" Nogap said, "Do you know that you don't know?" Baby Sovereign said, "How could I know that?" Nogap said, "Then are all things devoid of knowledge?" Baby Sovereign said, "How could I know that?" Still, let me try to say something about this. How could I know that what I call knowing is not really not knowing? How could I know that what I call not knowing is not really knowing?
Now let me try asking you something. When humans sleep in a damp place, they wake up deathly ill and sore about the waist. But what about eels? If humans live in trees, they tremble with fear and worry. But how about monkeys? Of these three, which knows what is the right place to live? Humans eat the flesh of their livestock. Deer eat grass, snakes eat centipedes, hawks and eagles eat mice. Of these four, which knows the right thing to eat? Monkeys take she-monkeys for mates, elks mount deer, male fish frolic with female fish, while humans regard Mao Chang and Lady Li as great beauties. But when fish see them, they dart into the depths. When birds see them, they soar into the skies. When deer see them, they bolt away without looking back. Which of these four knows what is rightly alluring? From where I see it, all the sproutings of human kindness and responsible conduct, and all the trails of right and wrong are hopelessly tangled and confused. How could I know how to distinguish and demonstrate any conclusions about them? Nogap said, "If that's the case, then you can't even tell benefit from harm. Does the utmost person really fail to distinguish between benefit and harm?" Baby Sovereign said, "The utmost person is miraculous, beyond understanding. The lakes may burst into flames around him, but this can't make him feel it is too hot. The rivers may freeze over, but this can't make him feel it is too cold. Ferocious thunder may crumble the mountains. The winds may shake the seas, but this cannot make him feel startled. Such a person chariots on the clouds and winds, piggybacks on the sun and moon, and wanders beyond the four seas. Even death and life can do nothing to change him, much less the sproutings of benefit and harm." Master Jittery Magpie asked Master Long Tall Lumbertree, "I have heard the Master relating the claim that the sage does not engage in projects, does not seek benefit, does not avoid harm, does not pursue happiness, does not follow any specific course. He says something by saying nothing, and says nothing by saying something, and thus does he wander, beyond the dust and grime." The Master considered these rude and careless words, but I believe they are the practice of the mysterious course. What do you think? Master Long Tall Lumbertree said, "These words would send even the Yellow Emperor into fevers of confusion. How could that fellow Confucius understand them? And you, on the other hand, are judging far too prematurely. You see an egg and try to get it to crow at dawn. You see a crossbow pellet and try to roast it for your dinner. I'm going to try speaking some reckless words. How about you listening just as recklessly? Standing shoulder to shoulder with the sun and moon, scooping up time and space and smooching them all together, leaving them all to their own slippery mush, so that every enslavement is also an ennobling. The mass of men are beleaguered and harried by it all, while the sage remains so stupid and dense that he mixes in with all these 10,000 diverse harvests, but tastes a single full, unmixed ripeness in all and in each. For to him, each thing is just so. And through the rightness of each, the thisness of each, he lets each enfold each. How then do I know that delighting in life is not a delusion? How do I know that in hating death, I am not like an orphan who left home in youth and no longer knows the way back? Lady Li was a daughter of the border guard of Ai. When she was first captured and brought to Qin, she wept until tears drenched her collar. But when she got to the palace, sharing the king's luxurious bed and feasting on the finest meats, she regretted her tears. How do I know that the dead don't regret the way they used to cling to life? If you dream of drinking wine, in the morning you will weep. If you dream of weeping, in the morning you will go out hunting. While dreaming, you don't know it's a dream. You might even interpret a dream in your dream, and then you wake up and realize it was all a dream. Perhaps a great awakening would reveal all of this to be a vast dream. And yet the foolish imagine they are already awake. How clearly and certainly they understand it all. This one is a lord, they decide. That one is a shepherd. What stubborn prejudice. Confucius and you are both dreaming. And when I say you're dreaming, I'm dreaming too. So if you were to agree with these words as right, I would name that nothing more than a way of offering condolences for the demise of their strangeness. For actually, even if after 10,000 generations some great sage shows up who knows how to resolve this, it would still be as if he showed up after only a single day.
Suppose you and I get into a debate. If you win and I lose, does that really mean you are right and I am wrong? If I win and you lose, does that really mean I'm right and you're wrong? Must one of us be right and the other wrong? Or could both of us be right, or both of us wrong? If neither you nor I can know, a third person would be even more benighted. Whom should we have straightened out the matter? Someone who agrees with you? But since they already agree with you, how can they straighten it out? Someone who agrees with me. But since they already agree with me, how can they straighten it out? Someone who disagrees with both of us. But if they already disagree with both of us, how can they straighten it out? Someone who agrees with both of us. But since they already agree with both of us, how can they straighten it out? So, neither you nor I nor any third party can ever know how it is. Shall we wait for yet some other? What is meant by harmonizing with them by means of their heavenly transitions? It means right is also not right, and so is also not so. If right were ultimately right, its differentiation from not right would admit of no debate. If so were ultimately so, its differentiation from not so would admit of no debate. Thus, even though the transforming voices may depend on something, it is tantamount to not depending on anything at all. Harmonize with them all by means of their heavenly transitions. Follow along with them in their limitless overflowings, and you will be able to fully live out your years. By forgetting each year, by forgetting what should or should not be, letting yourself be jostled and shaken by the boundlessness. For that is precisely how to lodge yourself securely in the boundlessness. The penumbra said to the shadow, "First you were walking, then you were standing still. First you were sitting, then you were upright. Why can't you decide on a single course of action?" The shadow said, "Do I depend on something to make me as I am? Does what I depend on something else? Is my dependence like the case of the snake's skin or the cicada's shell? How would I know why I am so or not so?"
Once Zhuangzi dreamt. He was a butterfly, fluttering about joyfully just as a butterfly would. He followed his whims exactly as he liked and knew nothing about Zhuangzi. Suddenly he awoke, and there he was, the startled Zhuangzi in the flesh. He did not know if Zhou had been dreaming, he was a butterfly, or if a butterfly was now dreaming it was Zhou. Now surely Zhou and a butterfly count as two distinct identities, as two quite different beings. And just this is what is meant when we speak of transformation of anyone being into another.
of the transformation of all things.